And so, look, this kind of leads into the next question that's kind of started to, I would say, move around the Gator sphere. I'm not trying to start anything. I'm not trying to create any nonsense here. I see the comments already. I can see the future. However, I see things, I hear things, and this is where Gator Nation heads is Armstrong over his head? Is he too young? Did Billy make too much of a stretch with Armstrong? And we're going to give our thoughts here, but I'm going to pass it to Dave really quick just to kind of read some stats off from this year to last year, and then we're going to go from there.
Yeah, I'm just going to run it. I'll just lead off with some basic stats here. And this is against FBS opponents. They do not count FCS opponents at teamrankings.com. Florida yards per game given up is 365 yards. They've given up 365.1 yards per game. Last year, they were giving up 412.3 yards against FBS opponents. This year, passing yards given up, they're giving up 222.6. Last year was 233.9, so a little bit small marginal improvement. Rushing yards given up per game, 142.6, 2022, 178.4. But turnover margin, didn't really get to that, but you can obviously tell there's way, way, way less turnovers this year than there was last year. I think that is what's really hurting this defense as well, is they're not really getting that many turnovers. And obviously, you get a turnover, keep your offense back on the field. It's easier to score that way sometimes, depending on field position. But, I mean, a lot of things can change these stats. I mean, if your offense stays on the field longer and they can drive a football for 10 plays for 5 or 6 minutes, it gives your defense a rest. They come out there fresh. At the same time, it keeps the other team's offense off the field, which also improves your defensive numbers as well. So, I mean, you could talk, defensive coordinator, is he over his head or if he's not? I mean, when you go 3 and out a million times a game, it's really hard for the defense to really stop somebody. And I think that's what you kind of saw yesterday. And, I mean, that's the thing. You have to have a good offense so your defense can play better. You also have to have a good defensive line so your defense can play better. And they're not trying to chase a guy around 8 seconds before he finally just becomes open and he takes one to the house or he's tackled for a first down. So, I mean, a lot of things could factor into these. I think it's unfair to give a first-year DC that title of him being in over his head, especially when he doesn't really have guys that I guess he recruited. But at the same time, I mean, we were preaching Patrick
Toney.
Yeah, and I was ready to run him off the field as well. But I mean, at some point, you got to realize, hey, right now we just don't have the talent back there. And now I will say, in the backfield, the DBs, you do have the talent. And that's something else. That's a Corey Raymond problem because he's in charge of that part. And that's the part that really comes off the charts to me. Now, I don't blame Jason Marshall or the other DBs for a quarterback sitting back there for 7 seconds and able to throw the football. Because as I said, you got to chase the guy around. They're eventually going to get open. But when you got a 50-50 shot coming your way and you're giving up 100% of them, that's an issue. And that's the thing that I really look forward to. And I can't blame Jordan Castell. He's a young kid. And he's made plays. Like, he's made better plays than any of the other safeties we've had in the past 2 years back there, Trey Dean. And so I really, I really can't blame Austin Armstrong so far this year for what he's seen. Plus, we've played a harder schedule this year as well. Last year's schedule wasn't as bad. And you had Anthony Richardson, who could run to get you a first down. I know he wasn't the best thrower, but, I mean, the offense was getting down the field a little bit more when Anthony Richardson was there, I think, but not from a passing perspective. It was more from a rushing and running the ball perspective. And you have a good offensive line. You had Osiris Torrance, Ethan White, all those other guys. You don't have those guys right now. So Mertz, for what he's done this year, I mean, him and Spencer Rattler, both those quarterbacks, for what they've done this year with the offensive lines that they got, is pretty amazing.
I believe, just a few weeks ago, after week 1 and week 2, we were loving Armstrong. He was our guy. He had a top 10 defense. We were back. He was rocking and rolling. And now, obviously, we've had a little bit of a slide, so there's some frustration. But I'm wondering where that defense went from that spring game that I saw. It's wild how the offense looked so meek, and the defense looked it looked elite, it looked quick, it had twitch, it had heart, it had passion, and it's completely flipped from the summer. Now, I also believe that, look, this defensive class that we've put together thus far, I know the dotted line hasn't been signed yet. You got to credit to him for a lot of it, because Miles Graham, I believe, was the only defensive guy that was committed before Armstrong got here. And yes, we moved very quickly off of Patrick Toney. We were ready to see him go. I was not. I was on the I was willing to see another year. But again, the patience in this room for Florida Gators is very minimal. I think a bigger issue to look at is the surrounding staff and and the surrounding company, which it could be the talent, could be coaching staff. Is he a little over his head by hiring Armstrong? Absolutely. I think I agree. I said that too. It's a new guy coming in. There's gonna be a lot of great things that he's going to bring to you, but he's also gonna have a lot of skeletons in the closet. And in the sense, not that he's got baggage, but by being a young coach, there's lack of experience that's going to creep up on you. Unfortunately, again, I think it's more of the issue that's surrounding him, which I talked about on Sunday's show. Just the coaching experience that's on this team is very minimal. And when you try to bring in another, coach that doesn't have that lacks experience, that's supposed to now lead a staff of other coaches that lack experience, excluding Coach Raymond, it's tough. So I think there's a bigger issue at hand. I'm not ready to give up on Armstrong yet. But look, I was talking with Between the Hedges this past few weeks here. If you go look at the staff that Kirby has had, defensive coordinator was Dan Lanning, offensive line coach Sam Pittman, offensive coordinator Mel Tucker. I feel like I'm on Sunday Night Football NBC. Mel Tucker, Michigan State. You know what I mean? He's had some guys, and those guys, and how I look at that is, look, I know Mel Tucker hasn't had the most greatest success. I know neither has Pittman. Dan Lanning out here is a dog. My point to mentioning those names are the fact that they left their position and went immediately to a head coaching job. If we look at our coaches right now, ain't a single one of them are on the cusp of getting a head coaching job in college football at a Power 5 school, right? Even Patrick Toney, had to go and become an assistant in the NFL. So I think that is something that Billy needs to look at this year. Like, hey, you might have to do a complete resurface of the coaching. We keep putting all this pressure on the kids. At what point do we go, hey, I get it, the talent may not be there, but it's still a it's still a body. And if you can't teach this kid how to hit somebody, sure, some guys lack heart, but at the end of the day, I'm always gonna blame it on the leadership. That's gonna be where I fall on. And that's where I'm starting to hold accountability more. I think there's a bigger issue with that coaching staff. We put it on Billy, but I think it's this. You got 85 people on staff. That's what you need to take a look at, in my opinion.
Okay.
Look, the other thing to consider here is that we're what?
Hold on. Let Dave go. I'll let Dave go before you roll. What did you say, Dave?
Yeah, I'll let Holly go after this.
Oh, okay. Okay, go.
All those coaches you mentioned, what team did you just mention when you said
that was Georgia?
Okay, so what kind of talent does Georgia recruit?
Elite talent.
Elite talent. What are we recruiting right now on defense?
Elite talent.
They're not here yet. So
no, I know. It was supporting my argument that I think Armstrong could eventually be one of those guys. That's why I don't think we should be too quickly to judge. I just think it's the surrounding staff that's not helping him. I was supporting that. Like, I agree. Like, I think we have a guy that can be one of those guys in Armstrong, but I don't believe that we have it anywhere else. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, I mean,
Rob Sale's not going to go get a head coaching job next year. That guy might not even be a damn near offensive line. You know what I mean? That's my point here. Right,
having talent makes your coaching job a lot easier, and that's something we don't have. So, like I said, small improvements I see from what I've read off, and that's all you can really ask for until we get the talent here. But you can go ahead, Hawk.
Well, look, just kind of to the point. I don't think that Armstrong is in over his head. Based on the defense that I saw in your spring game, that defense was unleashed, and they were blitzing, they were aggressive. They were coming from different angles in order to try to get to the quarterback, which, look, if your defensive line as of right now isn't good enough on its own to create pressure, that's kind of the defense that you need to be running. You need to find creative ways to get something in front of the quarterback's face to force that ball out of the pocket, force that ball out of his hand to keep your DBs from being exposed for 8 seconds. And it looked like, from what I saw in the spring game, that was Austin Armstrong's defensive philosophy, was just an utter, figure out where it's coming from because it's going to come every play. That's what I thought that this was going to look like when you guys got out onto the field for the season. And it almost feels like that has been reined in a little bit, or potentially he doesn't believe that the personnel really plays to that for a season, for a full season, for the personnel you have now. I don't know. It looked like that defense was going to play with a level of reckless abandon, and you were going to see blitzes, schemes, stunts, all these different things, and it just has not been that way on the actual playing field. And I wonder if that's more Billy trying to rein things in with him, or if that's just that the personnel is not there for him to really run that defense on a consistent basis. I wouldn't say give up on the guy. I don't think that's the case at all. I think that we're not seeing what we saw in the spring game, and there's a difference between the philosophy that we got a glimpse of versus what we saw versus, say, Georgia, or even for that matter, South Carolina. You know, again, I just haven't seen that same level of just edge and push and quick twitch that we thought we would see.
Yeah, look, I think consensus says, again, I think we're on the same page that he isn't over his head, and there's multitude of factors of the reason for a little bit of the decline on defense. I think I've seen the noise on Twitter a little bit that they're tired of hearing, you know, the quality of player and its excuses. That's where I think it frustrates me. Is like, look, our job is to talk about it and try to figure out what the hell's going on, because it's either it's the coaching, it's this or that, but numbers, we use these numbers to try to justify, you know, as much as we can. When Armstrong came in and he had the nasty bunch at Southern Miss, we utilized those numbers to our defense. For the first 3 weeks of the season, we had a top 10 defense, right? Those numbers supported the argument that he wasn't, you know, on the verge to being an elite defensive coordinator. Now that's trended the wrong direction over the last few weeks, and you know, we're a little on the other to look the other way. So what is it? I don't know. We're trying to figure it out. Q keeps saying that Corey Raymond's in over his head having the whole secondary, and I'm wondering that too, because obviously Patrick Toney had everything and they passed it over to Corey Raymond. We rejoiced when we heard that noise, but maybe he wasn't ready for that either, right? You've got a lot of moving pieces this year that happen. You get a new DC, you get Ethan Callaway, new tight end coach. You got Billy Gonzalez, new wide receiver coach. You've got Corey Raymond that has his role steps up. Again, this is not me making excuses, but it's starting to realize like there's a lot of moving pieces moving parts that happened at the beginning of the year. A lot of guys taking on new responsibilities when the guys we had in their places in the first place weren't dominating their responsibilities, and i.e. being Billy.
Yeah, but Corey Raymond's been a DB coach for a long time. He should know what he's doing. Like
I agree.
I can't give Corey Raymond an excuse. Like, there's no excuse for him. Now, maybe some of the other coaches, possibly. I know that the wide receiver coach Billy Gonzalez, he's been doing it for a long time too. But you know,
wide receivers have been great. I'm just saying, like, it's not like I'm trying to find like, hey, Corey, but you've got everyone kind of took on a new role, which something may have got left behind because there's new people there that was being picked up before. That's all that I'm saying. Like, Billy Gonzalez may be doing a great job, but maybe the old wide receiver coach is doing something else for the tight end. You know, I don't know. I'm guessing here, right? I'm just kind of I'm spitballing here.
I will go back to what Holly said, though. He's right about playing with aggression, because earlier on in the show, I said knock the hell out of somebody. We haven't seen that. Like you said, exotic blitzes. We haven't really seen much of that either. So I will give him credit on that. And as I said, knock the hell out of somebody.